Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with me, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's show is David R. Murray, a fundraiser, philanthropist, vocalist, and Broadway producer. Join me now as I go on the aisle for a conversation with David. Greetings, David Murray. I'm thrilled that you're my guest today. Thank you for taking the time to do this with me.
It's a pleasure and an honor and a wonderful invitation, so I'm delighted to be here.
You know, I've been thinking for the last couple hours going over our history together, and I particularly enjoy this podcast because I get to talk to friends like you. Okay, so let's figure it out. We met in the lobby of the Phoenix Theater in Indianapolis.
In their old location in the
That's
church.
where we met in Indianapolis, Indiana. So tell me, what year was it?
It was 1992. I had just graduated from college and moved to Indiana to work at my college fraternity's national headquarters.
Okay.
And in an effort to meet people and become connected to the community, I volunteered at Phoenix Theater to run sound for one of their main stage productions that fall. So I met you in the fall of 1992. I graduated from Bucknell in 1992. I was a computer science major, but not a very good computer programmer. So my college fraternity offered me a job as the editor and art director of their national alumni magazine. And I had never been to Indiana. I had never been to Indianapolis, but I needed a job, and it was the only job I had. So I accepted and got in my car and drove out there in August or September of 1992. And it was my first home as an adult and a really critical part of my development as a human being, including getting to know you.
But did you somehow in the back of your mind knew that you had to get your career started somehow, right?
Yeah, I think back then it was less common to move back in with your parents. In my world, that would not be a success. Not that I wasn't welcome if something went terribly wrong. I mean, you met my parents, Tom.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
They're
Wonderful people.
long gone now, but they wanted me to get out on my own and fly from the nest. Having a job was really important. I was born in Cincinnati, but I grew up mostly on the East Coast in the suburbs of New York City. I didn't feel out of water completely in the Midwest. I knew I'd have some built-in friends who were my coworkers at the fraternity headquarters. It really worked out terrific for me. It's where a lot of important things in my life happened.
And were you able to use any of your computer skills on the job?
Well, I did actually. When I was working at the fraternity headquarters, they decided to install a new donor database system and alumni database system. Then, through a relationship I made, thanks to you, with another fraternity executive, a guy named Doug Dilling, I went to work at WFYI, the public TV and radio station in Indianapolis. They also installed a new donor database system. I was able to combine my experience in fundraising, philanthropy, and donor communications with my computer science background.
Mm-hmm. So when did you leave Indy and why?
I was in Indianapolis for 8 years, from 1992 to 2000. I really loved it. I had a lot of firsts there. I bought a condo. I went to grad school. I came out of the closet. I fell in love. I broke someone's heart, got a new car, got fired. I found a new job. All these things happened during my 8 years in Indy.
Talk about formative.
Right? It was also a safe and nurturing community for me. You, Tom, were a key connector for me to a lot of people who are still in my life today and probably have been guests on this show. People like David Hochoy, Tom Tyler, and others. Wayne Cruiser, the late Wayne Cruiser, was an important friend. I was finishing grad school in the summer of 2000. I went to IUPU, now called IU Indianapolis, and I did a Master of Arts in Philanthropic Studies.
Of course, at that time, the School of Philanthropy was well known, but not as well known as now. but I mean,
Absolutely right.
they, I always tell people they wrote the book. They codified fundraising, did they not?
They did. It used to be called the Fundraising School. Then it was called the Center on Philanthropy.
Yes.
And then after I left, it became its own school with
And
undergrads and graduates.
were you in one of the first classes in that program? Did they offer the degree right after you jumped on it?
Yeah, I think I was the third or fourth
Okay.
class. I started in 98 and graduated
Okay.
in 2000. I felt like I had done all the things I could do in Indianapolis. I'd overcome obstacles, I'd achieved things, I was well known.
Well, I
Again,
remember walking through the coming out process with you. You reminded me of that. And of course, I hadn't been out that long myself because I came from that generation. We had a lot of meaningful experiences. This show is geared towards the arts, but I also chose you because you're an artist.
mm,
Aside all the other things that you do, and you have an art sensibilities, and we'll get into your fundraising track record, but you also get why the arts need support. You come from all kinds of perspectives. You are an artist, you performer, you work closely with arts organizations, helping find fits for them with donors. And another reason I have you on for our listeners, this guy is a real life Broadway musical producer.
Tony nominated on my first outing, so I'm
I
very
mean,
happy about that.
that's quite a resume, David. So of course I had to have you on. There's so many things we could talk about. But let's go back to your bio. Take us each step. What happened when you left here and where did you go?
Yeah, so in 2000, I moved to Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
to work at PBS headquarters. So that was a job that I got because I had gotten to know the people at headquarters when I worked at WFYI in Indianapolis. I worked there for 3 years and then went to work for a for-profit company that sold software and services to PBS and its stations. So it felt like the same job, even though I stopped officially being an employee of PBS and became an employee of this software company.
Hmm. Okay, and those years at DC, of course, I lived there at one time and we had that in common. I remember that, and I visited you there. I recall was Tom Tyler living there at that time or not?
Maybe. I
Tom
think
Tyler,
so.
who we spoke of, he's a former Indianapolis men's chorus performer. And by the way, we need to jump back to talk about the men's chorus because that was a very important part of your coming out process and mine as well. And
Mm.
just in general, those were the years of the AIDS crisis in Indianapolis, were they not?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the first year I was in the Indianapolis Men's Chorus was only its second or third year, and we sang more funerals than we did concerts that year.
Yes. And every year the memoriam section of the program will get longer and longer. We even had a song that we would sing before performances, and it was so sad whenever we sang Light One Candle. Do you
Yes.
remember singing that as a group in honor of our fellows who'd fallen?
And
It's
that
it's
song is
always
on the album. It's the title of the album.
Yeah, we did a CD too. I forget all these things. And then we went to a couple of really cool, I don't know if you went to both of them during your tenure, but I went to Denver and then I went to Tampa. Were you at those two?
I did not go to Denver, but I did
Right.
go to Tampa.
And you heard us all bragging about being the stars at Denver.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the Gala organization, the Gay and Lesbian Association
Association.
of Choruses. There were a pretty good amount of them, and then has grown ever since, and it still exists. There were big ones all over the country, like San Francisco and Dallas and Seattle, huge ones, big budgets, CDs every year. But we held our own. Indianapolis.
Absolutely right. Yeah. And I just went to gala again this past summer of 2024. So,
Hmm.
so I went to gala with you in
Oh, yeah.
1996, I think. And then the next time I went was 2024 with a group here in New York City called the Empire City
Yeah,
Men's
well,
Chorus.
you've maintained your association with choral music and particular the Gala movement. So, wow, Dave, that's just an amazing trajectory, right? I've not sung in an organized chorus ever since, but as a reviewer, there are very few people like me around who love choral music and review it. I go to a lot of choral concerts, the symphonic choir here, of course, and there are various others. we have to give a shout out to the men's chorus because it's the 35th anniversary this year.
Wow.
I don't know if you're aware, but the men's chorus here has evolved into, it's all new, different stand in place and your black tuxedo and black bow tie holding up your book. Now there's sizzling Broadway production numbers and videos, and it's just mind-boggling. Greg Sanders, the artistic director, has so many of the same qualities that Michael Hayden. And we should give him a shout out. He was hired the second year of the men's
Mhm.
chorus, and they had similar qualities in that they were big thinkers, visionaries, disciplinarians, and they really knew music. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Michael Hayden was a really meaningful influence on my life, not just musically, but as a person, as a professional. I have to tell you, you will not believe this. I walked into the restaurant. I flew into Minneapolis last summer to go to gala. I walked into a restaurant where a bunch of people from my chorus were having dinner, and who was sitting there? Michael Hayden,
Yeah.
who recognized me immediately. Hadn't seen him since 1996.
Oh my goodness.
And we've continued to be in touch. We had a long dinner when he was here in New York. We've been Zooming. He'd love to talk to you, I'm sure, for this
Yeah.
podcast. He's
Yeah.
had quite a life. He lives in Greece
Oh
now,
yeah, now
Athens,
he's in
Greece.
Greece where he found his birth mother. He's retired. We're not Facebook friends, but I've seen his stuff. Well, that's good on him, being able to live out his years. I'm sure a piece of him was missing. I knew that about him. He made reference to it on occasion, what that felt like. He was very sensitive, and expression was everything to him. He encouraged us all to express. Many gay men come from trauma. And we use that through singing, like comedians do, and a lot of artists use that to express themselves in a positive way. It's healing, it's therapeutic. Isn't that
For
true?
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's healing and therapeutic both for the performer and the audience, I
Hmm.
think.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a lovely exchange.
And then the way many of us used it to come out. I was in the closet most of my career at Channel 6 because I could tell from the people I worked with that I was in an environment that did not encourage authenticity. The way they talked about women and gay people, myself included, I was terrified that I would lose my career. And I was all tied up in my identity. My job was define me.
Yes, that was true for me.
Too in those days, if you got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, your name is published and you became a pariah. You know,
Sure.
but the chorus made it possible for us to stand shoulder to shoulder with each other and to sing, music that was so many things to so many people. I remember that. You could invite your friends in a subtle way. You could come out by, oh, come see my concert. Oh yeah, who you see? Well, will you just come? No,
Exactly.
I kind of came out to my own family when we went to Fort Wayne. My whole family, I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and many of them came. That's the first time they had seen anything like that. An all gay men's chorus, and they were doing something positive that wasn't in the shadows. It was powerful.
Right. And I thought it was great that the chorus did not have the word gay in its name. And we always had at least one straight member. Remember the used car salesman who was in the choir, the straight guy?
Yeah.
So it was never exclusively gay. Michael used to say that we were gay by who we are, not by what we do. We sang beautiful
Remember,
art
though,
song.
a lot of people weren't happy with that, though, because they accused us of being in the closet. You can't have it both ways, that kind of thing. But you could look at it a whole different thing. We don't need to be defined by our sexuality. Why can't we just be a group of singers, artists?
Right.
I've never wanted to be known as a gay producer or a Latino producer. I hate that. They're part of who I am. They don't define me. How about you?
Same thing. I'm not only gay in June, I'm gay all year round, and I'm just effortlessly gay. And I think it's really important to have that balance between what you assert and what you demonstrate. Like, are
So,
you just
Dave,
talking about it or are you really doing it?
David, what about choral music? What do you love about choral music? And obviously, it stayed with you. And
Yeah, it's the earliest music, right? I mean, people's voices are the most intimate and profound thing we've got. And I think choral music can transport people, give them the freedom to process things that they don't have words for. We often perform in small venues where the lights are on and you can see the audience. We can watch people tear up, reach for their hanky. They're just feeling so moved. It's rare these days, especially in big cities, in complex times, when you have so much going on, to just sit down and hear literal harmony, to be surrounded by harmony of people breathing in sync and performing together. Choral music really can't be simulated. There's no way to do it with a synthesizer or a keyboard. Recordings of choral music don't really come close to the experience of being in the room and feeling pushed back in your chair by.
The wall of sound.
Exactly.
At the same time, I don't think that people really make that connection with all the performing arts. Hey, folks, you've been listening to choral music your whole life. Movies, birds, those background singers, movies, those people in those movies where you're hearing choirs. Well, guess what?
Nowadays, there's also frequently choral music in video games. The
Oh, yeah.
background of video games, when there's a big climactic scene, you hear not words really, but just choral sounds. It's the way to
Yeah.
convey passion and power and drama. That's what choral
Yeah.
music does.
And when it's good, it's just like magical. It's just transports you, right?
Hmm.
So you're still doing that, but we got to talk about your fundraising. I was looking at your bio. Okay, you are employed by Columbia University. That is no small thing, and you have risen to the heights, my friend. Having had some experience as an arts administrator and having my own company, I know quite a bit about fundraising. I took a brief respite from the arts to get my credentials as a fundraiser and development director at a treatment hospital. If you remember Fairbanks, and I have the great feeling of having helped. I raised capital campaign funds for a whole building. So
Wow.
I know what it must feel like for you, but your experience in fundraising has been so vast and so impressive. Give us a thumbnail sketch of that.
Well, my first direct fundraising job was at WFYI, where I was hired to be manager of grants and government relations. Then I moved to a different job at the same station as manager of major gifts. And I was 25 years old and frankly, pretty unqualified. I was very grateful for having had the opportunity. What I realized, thanks to my donors, even donors from WFYI, was that it's not about me, it's not about the charity, it's not about needing money, it's about the donor and what the donor needs and wants. Many donors want the world to be better. They want more opportunities for people to get treatment, protect dogs and cats from illness and abandonment, or protect civil rights. It's about the donors and their interests. My job as a fundraiser is to connect people with passion and financial capacity to organizations that have the expertise to change the world. It's the same process whether you're talking to somebody about a $100 gift or a $10 million gift.
Mhm. And matching needs, finding a donor to give him a good fit. What can I do with these funds that I have? If you can match them with your organization, everybody wins. Both parties, our needs are fulfilled. There's nothing like it, is there?
No, it's very intimate being a fundraiser because there's not very many people we talk about our money with
Mm.
or our family. Your fundraiser has to talk to you about your money and how you feel about your family and your will. We don't talk about death very often, but we have to talk about your legacy in fundraising. And if we do it right, the happiest person in the room is always the donor.
I tried sales for a while and I was terrible because, they wanted me to sell these videos, but they wanted me to close in 30 days. And it's like, hello, there's anybody out there who's going to write a check in 30 days on something like that. It's going to take time. That's how I realized that sales is a whole different thing than fundraising. Sales is less about relationships and more about finish that whole thing.
Well, good
All
sales
due
is about
respect to salesmen out there. Yeah.
I mean, the most successful salespeople are the ones who develop relationships and have multiple visits. The
Yes.
same customer comes back over and over and buys one video from you, and then buys a second video, and buys a package of
Yes.
four, and then acquires a new company and they need a video team, and you make that work for them. Yeah, I think one thing in my career, so I've worked at big universities, but I've also worked at small civil rights grassroots nonprofits. And
The LGBT organization, GLSEN, correct?
yes, GLSEN, it originally stood for the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educators Network. It was about respect for all in K through 12 schools and equality for LGBTQ students.
Mm-hmm.
But there we had to raise payroll. Every 2 weeks, we had to bring in a certain amount of money to pay the bills, pay the rent, pay the staff. And so that forced us away from the relationship model you're describing and into this transactional,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
you, Tom, gave $10,000 last March, and you are in my budget for $10,000 this March,
Mm.
even if you would rather give in October and give 100,000 because I still need the 10 right now and I have nowhere else to go. So
Yeah.
that was a surprise to me. It was much harder raising money, and I
Yeah.
was proud of it. It was gratifying, but it was very different. Yeah.
Stressful. Sleepless nights.
That-
Meeting payroll is, I mean, I don't care what the circumstances are. And I've been in that situation running not-for-profits. So you got a wide range of experience and you met a lot of people along the way, made a lot of connections, both
yeah, I've
on
been very
donor
lucky.
level, peer level, every which way.
That's one thing that I've only recognized recently, but that's always been true in my life, including with you and the people I knew in Indianapolis 30 years ago, is that many of the people I keep in touch with occupy different roles in a community at different times. So sometimes you, Tom, are a singer, a performer. Other
Mhm.
times you're a producer or a director. Other times you're a writer or an audience member. That's important too, or a
Mhm.
reviewer. I've done that in my life too. There's sometimes I'm a singer, sometimes I'm a audience member, sometimes I'm a donor. So I think those are the most interesting communities where people do different things at different times.
There was a time in my life when I was between jobs, and whenever I was between jobs, I could consult, but I was having cash flow difficulties, so I needed a job with benefits. So I went looking for a real job, and I just remember how hard that was because I've never been a good 9 to 5er. I like being my own boss too. That's my control freak nature.
Setting
But
your own schedule.
I couldn't get any work, and it was terrifying to go through that. But I was able to reinvent myself. Somehow I found the wherewithal to create my own destiny. So I reinvented myself a lot. When I showed my resume to someone who ran a company, a good friend, I said, "What do you think about my resume? Make believe you're hiring me and you're interviewing me." And she took a look at my resume. She said, "Well, Tom, I hate to tell you this, but this makes you look like you jump around a lot." I felt like I was being shamed. I kind of resisted that. I thought, screw that. You could look at it a different way. Here's a guy who isn't a dabbler. He's been a success in everything he's done.
Well, that's interesting you say that because my resume shows a lot of jumping around too,
Mhm.
partly because three of the jobs I've had, real full-time jobs, I've gotten fired from.
Mhm.
Every case unexpectedly, including the first one, which you remember in
Mhm.
1994, but then twice later here in New York in the 20 teens, where no notice, no warning, no nothing. And it was just like, today's your last day, you'll be escorted from the building. And it was terrifying.
Right.
But the job I have now at Columbia is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, internal consultant, jack of all trades. And what I realized is that all of those varied experiences from before in my life have actually perfectly prepared me now. I've seen it all. I've had executive directors arrested. I've had financial fraud. I've had HR problems. And, I've had to hire people and fire people and cut budgets and double programs. Anyway, nothing phases me anymore. It turns out, and I think you've discovered this too, having that wealth of experience and the variety
Oh,
earlier in your life has prepared you to do things that almost no one else could do. I mean, who has your
Well,
experience, Tom? Nobody.
I'm realizing that with this podcast because my knowledge base is so extensive. I found that I can talk to anybody about anything, find common ground. A lot of that came from fundraising. A lot of that came from as an arts administrator. A lot of that came from television. Couple that with the wisdom that comes with living a long life. And I find, David, I don't know about you, but I always used to hate buzzwords and cliches. I just love the word intentional. I love intentionality and manifesting. I've been doing that my whole career, not realizing I did it, and then it became a buzzword. But I intentionally go after things now because I know myself well enough. Of course, I've had a lot of therapy, so that helps. Self-actualization. And
Exactly.
and I just get more and more fearless. They say about when you get older, you don't give a damn what people think. You're not held back because when you're younger, the insecurity and the fear can be paralyzing.
I actually find, to my surprise, the more I lean out, the less in the weeds and anxious and nitpicky I am, the more I lean back and say, that's a mess. See you Monday. The more people actually want to know what I have to say. Whereas if I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a crisis and we need to do this and then this and you need to work on that and we're going to get through it together by doing that, that just causes agita for everybody.
Yeah. You just reminded me when you did that little scene there that you were younger. I remember you being just like all over the place. Your energy was off the charts. When I was young, I was so impatient because I wanted to create, I wanted to express, I was just like, my joie de vivre was like, really, it was intense, but I feel like I've learned to slow down and it still comes back at the right times.
It's in
Work,
there.
working under pressure. Yeah. So let's talk about your work in the arts. You are a philanthropist. In fact, let's be transparent. You have been a regular donor for Magic Thread Cabaret, the company that Dustin Klein and I run. You told us once that you felt that we were in the trenches. We were in the Midwest. And if anybody needs to be exposed to positive values, we promote inclusiveness and diversity. We are all about discovering new talent and giving people a chance to showcase their work in a safe environment. There are plenty of people in New York who could use your support, but you choose because you know what is harder in some ways in the Midwest to change minds.
Yeah. And there's a dearth of other outlets and opportunities there than here. I also trusted the leaders. You're a lifelong friend, so that mattered.
The stewardship part, that's something I take away from my fundraising experience, why it's important as I raise money that I've got to make sure that my donors know that their money is going to be well spent.
Hmm.
And
And
there
you've
were,
done a great job with that.
well, I try to, but right now, David, I want to talk about this. I've been talking to my guests, and this show is not meant to be political, but I think art has always been political. It's part of the whole thing. Artists have always been in the vanguard of change. We write and tell stories. A lot of these stories, it's about social change, many of them, social issues, if you will, and what's going on in the world. We reflect what's going on in the world. There's a lot of turmoil. And yet, the arts, I feel we need them more than ever. This is a time where I so much want to go into all the parallels with what's happened with, authoritarians across history. The first thing they go after is the intellectuals, the artists, because they fear us the most because of what we do. But at the same time, even people we disagree with, we have music in common. We have theater in common. We all love movies. It doesn't always have to be live performance. It can be anything that lifts your soul and your spirit, right?
Yeah, I think
We
artists,
all need that right now, the left and the right.
right. And I think artists working in any moment are reflecting the society of that moment back to itself.
Hmm.
And so that's what we need, I think, right now to try to make sense of these unprecedented, chaotic, tumultuous times. Either escape or
I was
meaningful
just thinking
reflection.
spirit escape. Yeah. And then it's so less pressure. There's no expectation. You don't know the politics of the person sitting next to you in a concert hall or a music hall or a concert. And you can small talk and feel okay, you know? I think we serve a great purpose right now. We always have, artists and arts organizations. I definitely want to talk to you about the shows that you're involved with producing and the theater. I want to hear more about that. Start with the theater in New York that you've been a long time associated with.
So, most of my giving to support the arts is charitable giving, philanthropic giving, as opposed to this one Broadway show I invested in.
You have your own charitable stuff that you do.
And there's two parts to my personal philanthropy. I give away money, but then I also give away my expertise as a fundraiser.
Mhm.
So when I have for paying clients, I charge a lot of money for a day's worth of consulting, but I offer that for free to organizations I care about as a part of my personal philanthropy. My cash gifts are primarily to Second Stage Theater, the big nonprofit Broadway and off-Broadway theater in New York. Every winter we do a reading of a new musical. It's a whole week of
And I
rehearsals and
see it's named
workshopping.
after your mom.
Exactly, the Nancy Donovan musical reading.
Oh,
And frankly, that keeps her alive because every year I get to talk to a whole team of new people, the actors, the musicians, the director and playwrights and composers. I get to tell them about her and why this thing is named after her, why they're having this opportunity,
that's
and they get to know her and they toast here's to Nancy. There's very few people in my life today who ever met my mother or my dad.
we have to share the story about your coming out. We had it all planned, you and me. We even about what you should wear. I told you what I would wear. We created this strategy. I was going to be presented as a role model who has done this and that. I know that I wore a tie. In many ways, I felt like, okay, am I being too ingenuous? This is like Wally and the Beaver. Oh, Mrs. Cleaver, such a beautiful dress you have on today.
Yes, you wore a starched white Oxford shirt. We went to the Aristocrat.
Oh my goodness.
It was Easter weekend,
And
a
I was
time of
the
rebirth,
first
right?
gay person, wasn't I,
Yeah.
ever? Yeah,
Oh, it was amazing. It was Easter of 93.
your parents were just the kindest, sweetest. I mean, your parents were just great. They loved you irregardless. I remember that you were so worried, like we all were. You know, those times you just like people were thrown out of their homes, lost their jobs. It was a lot to worry about.
I introduced them to Stuart and Warren and then to Jeff and Reed, who were,
Yes.
after I told them that I was gay and we had that discussion, my mother said, when we met all those people, I thought, David sure has a lot of musical friends.
Our friend Tom Tyler talks about his coming out, and his dad said the only complaint he had is like, there are a lot of huggers,
That's for sure.
a lot of
Oh.
hugging. So those are your charitable giving, and of course the consulting. I've done the same too, and that's so rewarding. Teaching people like you need a good board, you need this many board members, this is where they should come from, you need a development, this is how you write a press release. You got to get bylaws. Why are bylaws important? It's constant. People are reinventing the wheel. I just feel so bad for so many people because their intentions are so great, but they end up failing because they need help.
And they can't afford it and they don't know anybody. So it has been extremely gratifying. And there's probably a dozen theater companies, community organizations, arts groups that I consult with
So
once a
that's so
year.
rewarding when you go to their performances, you see their work and the joy it brings artists to be able to make a living if possible. Most of them aren't able to. I mean, like a competitor, but that's not why they do it. So let's move on to the Broadway shows. How did that happen?
There's only one so far. My friend Nick was putting together a group of people to be co-investors. He technically gets the assistant producer credit because he's sort of the bundler there's a total of five of us. He put in some of his own money and four other friends of his did too. And the show is called Operation Mincemeat. It's the best reviewed show in the history of the West End in London. It's a very British, show. It's kind of like Benny Hill and Monty Python. The show is actually set in 1942 or 43 during World War II. And it's just frenetic, high energy, hilarious. There's dancing Nazis. There's a corpse in a torpedo. Who knows what's going on in this show? So we imported the whole cast. There's 5 cast members, and they're all British, the originators of the roles from the West End production. 3 of them, plus a 4th who's not an actor, are the writers and composers of the show.
Okay.
So the Broadway company is the originals, incredible performers, a moving story, and completely divorced from modern politics. We're all still, I think, against Nazis, so we can agree that it
Now,
was good
did
that the
I
British.
imagine this, or I thought you were also involved in some capacity with what's it called, something happy ending?
Oh no, I'm just a big fan of Maybe Happy
Oh,
Ending. I
okay.
wish I had invested in that, but it's a genius show and also nominated for Tony.
I have visited you in many places that you've lived over the time of our friendship, including New York City. And I can say that you have lived a quintessential Manhattan experience. Beautiful homes, the whole 9 yards. You go see stuff, you're a foodie. You really have soaked up that city and you make no bones about it. You're not jaded about it. And I can see it reflected in your posts. You take a lot of pride in living in New York City.
Oh, I'm so grateful for it. I try to take advantage of all these wonderful opportunities I've been given and share them with others. You're welcome back anytime.
And how do you make your decision? There's so much. How do you make your decisions about? Do you have like I have to see everything, but I also have this pie chart kind of thing. What are my favorites? I'm growing my love for opera, but I love the ballet. Being a reviewer, a lot of things were acquired tastes, but theater will always be my first love. I love choral music. I love the symphony. It drives me nuts, but I have to portion it out. Visual art. I would go crazy if I lived in New York with all the choices.
Well, I mean, maybe the greatest luxury in New York is just lying on your couch and watching Law and Order because you
Which
could be doing
everybody in
anything,
New York has a Law and Order credit. Now it's Chicago. People who live out in Midwest have to have a Chicago credit or have Chicago credits. Same thing.
I go to see things people really just rave about. I go to see things friends are in or involved with. I try to go to see everything from the theater and performing arts companies I support financially or with consulting. The other thing that's great about it is whether you like it or not, you still have something to talk about. You can
Yeah.
either talk about how great it was and how moved you were, or you can talk about what you didn't
You
like and how
spend
it could be
much
better.
you spend much time seeing plays and off Broadway?
Yeah, I support this company called Out of the Box Theatrics, which does a lot of really compelling off Broadway stuff way down on West Christopher Street by the river. A second stage has a an off Broadway house and then does this off Broadway. And by the way, those words refer to the number of
Yes.
seats in the theater, not about money or budget or
Well, I
stars.
think back to what Brian Fonseca created
Mm,
in Indianapolis. And when you go to New York, you see the same thing.
yep,
A storefront theater, 150 seats. It plays that, he brought many of them here
right,
2 years after they were off Broadway. He got the rights to all this stuff. And I don't think Indy realizes they got all the stuff that was playing in New York within a certain frame of time,
right.
right?
Oh, well, that was the show where we
Somehow,
met.
huh?
Yeah, the show where we met was Lips Together, Teeth Apart by Terrence McNally. It
Oh,
was
he
the Midwest premiere
loved
of
that,
that
and he
show.
did Love, Valor, and Compassion,
He
which
did.
is groundbreaking because I think he was the first one where there was a nude man on stage for opening up people, heads exploded when he brought Love, Valor, and he did all two Angels in America. I mean, come on. Brian, I want to keep his memory alive, so it's important. David, there's one more thrilled than me that he got his obit in the New York Times. Just think about that. Not to mention CBS and NBC and the Wall Street Journal. It's remarkable. We all were part of that. Isn't that
Yeah, he
cool?
was there every night. It's hard
Yeah.
work to change the
Yeah.
world. It's
I
worth
don't
it.
want to leave you unless we give a shout out to Christopher, your husband. Tell our listeners about your husband, how you met, and what he means to you.
Yeah, so Christopher and I met in 2017 online. We were on apps and connecting. I don't think there's any better or worse way to meet people. We became exclusive in 2019 and got married later that year. Bought this apartment that you've been to here in Midtown, and we both got new jobs. I became a full-time employee at Columbia, as you said, and Christopher is a social worker for homeless queer youth, mostly youth of color. Recently, many recent immigrants to the United States, people who came across the southern border and made their way to New York, and for the first time ever have access to LGBTQ affirming healthcare and other kinds of support services, GED prep. They also have a lot of fun. You know, the ballroom scene from Pose. The junior version of that is called the Kiki scene, and Kiki originated at Patrick Martin Institute, where Christopher works.
And for people who are in the know, the organization again, tell us the name of it.
Yeah, it's called Hetrick Martin Institute,
Yes.
hmi.org. The two founders, Avery Hetrick and Damian Martin, were a couple in the 70s before AIDS in New York City. One was an MD psychiatrist and the other was a PhD psychologist. They came out of their townhouse one morning and there was a young man sleeping on their front stoop.
Mhm.
And they said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, my parents kicked me out because I'm gay." They said, "Oh, well, we're gay. We should help you." All of those people unfortunately died of AIDS, and the institute they created was named in their honor after they
Yes.
died.
My former television radio colleague, broadcaster, we didn't even get into all that. I have this imaginary stage manager saying, wrap it up. You got to be somewhere. I'm trying to get to network on time. So I'm going to let you go. This has been fun, right? Think about who knew that one day we would be doing an interview on a podcast, and then I would be sitting in my office on a laptop with
None of
you.
this existed. That's right.
Who knew? And who knew that you would be working at Columbia University? You would be married to a man. I mean, wow, we've been through some continuum, haven't we?
It's incredible. And I just want to say to you, Tom, how grateful I am to all the gifts you gave me when I was there, my first therapist, my job at WFYI, the Indianapolis
Leslie
News.
Moe, we need to give him a shout. We called him the therapist to the stars because he saw all of these artists.
I told him that, and he said, "Is it important to you that I'm a therapist to the stars?" Never let me get away with anything.
Even he was one of those there. I never second guessed his technique, but it would drive me crazy because I kept wanting him to give me advice. It's like, what am I paying him all this money if he's not telling me what to do, right?
But it turns out it's a better strategy.
Oh,
Thank you, Tom, for
thank
all
you.
the years in the past and all the years in the future that
Well,
I
I'm
have you in my life.
Thank you again for spending this time with me.
See you next time. Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official newsletter for 15 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community.
Thank you for joining me on the aisle. Please subscribe to my podcast. And if you want to hear previous episodes, find them on the All Indiana Podcast Network or listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. This is Tom Alvarez.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.